So hi everybody, nice to be today here with you from colleagues from all over the world, enjoying such interesting topics. Thanks the Athener organizers for this event. We are together with my colleague Constantina Deemetriou from Cyprus, who unfortunately she couldn't make it to be with us, but she's online watching us and will present part of this research project. So our topic is about a new teaching method. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term flipped method for teaching. Yes, some of you? Nice, thank you very much. This is a part of a European project where 6 countries participate: Hungary, Romania, Portugal, Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Cyprus. We are going to present the first part of the project. It's not, it hasn't finished yet. So what is flipped method? One of the most familiar and famous topics of the last 20 years or so, especially in higher education, has been the term flipped teaching method. Though there has been a confusion about what flipped means, most scholars agree that this method can be described as a student-centered approach that involves reversing the design of the learning environment, allowing students to engage in activities, apply concepts, and focus on higher level learning outcomes during class time. It's a more student-centered approach. This method is based on the philosophy of active learning, student-centered learning, and if correctly applied, it seems to enhance student engagement, motivation, and learning. From the Cyprus part, here you can see Cyprus in the island in the Mediterranean. Our university is localized in the capital of Cyprus, Nicosia, the European University Cyprus. Here it is. It's one of the largest private universities in Cyprus. And here we are together with my colleague, Dr. Constantina Deemetriou, whom I would like to welcome here and thank her very much for the excellent cooperation we have. Thank you, Constantina. So we developed a questionnaire based on international similar questionnaires in Google Forms, and we deliver it online, aiming basically to social sciences faculty, university teachers. And Constantina, would you like to continue with the description?
Yes, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, just a quick question. Am I able to control the slides, or because I cannot see an arrow here?
No, them on, Constantina, for you.
Okay, perfect. So continuing from the speech of Dr. Eleonora, basically this project, the first stage of this project, which is what we're presenting you today, is to see, even though the flipped teaching was something that was introduced years ago, we would like to examine with both quantitative and qualitative data, whether or not it's something that is started or is being used in our culture and in our universities. So here was a study that a lot of colleagues from different universities across Cyprus and Greece were welcome to complete an online questionnaire examining questions regarding their knowledge about what is flipped method and whether they use it or how they use it. So the total number of participants was at the end 42, and as I said, participants were from a variety of institutes, mainly in Cyprus. I think we had very few from Greece as well. I will present you the quantitative data. The first aim was to examine whether or not the faculty members knew what is flipped method and whether they used it. And we can see that most of the participants, when they were asked to define what the flipped method without giving them a definition, the majority said that it's an integrating a method that can be used to give some enthusiasm into the class and make it less boring, especially in conventional courses. You can see from the chart that many of them said that it's lectures that are recorded as videos for the students. Many of them said that it's a type of teaching that involves several types of activities and interactive mainly activities. Most of them, mainly all of them, agree that it's something that is more focused on the students' needs and involves blended learning. And it's nice to see that almost approximately 67% of the participants have used flipped method. But what is interesting here is that they didn't know that the way of their teaching was called flipped methods. And we know that because before asking them to report whether they use a flipped method class, we provided them with a definition. So after their opinion, we provided them a definition of flipped method, and then they said whether they tried or not. So yes, we can see that even though they tried, like 2/3 of the participants, they didn't know that what they did was called a flipped method and had a title. And it's something that has been examined and it's been researched out there with a massive evidences of usage. Now, the second aim was to examine their experience and their perspective about their students' experience. And here we have again a variety of very interesting things. First, let me say that about half of the participants who reported that they used the flipped method, they reported that they did it the last year. So it seems from our data that is a method that was mainly introduced due to the pandemic. And because of this technology improvement during the pandemic and the lockdowns put us in a situation where as faculty members we are trying to find something more interactive through computers and through e-learning. It seems that this was the cause or the motivation behind the use of flipped methods. That's why most of them have used it the past year, maximum 2 years ago. There were very, very few that knew this like 5 years ago or more. Now, regarding their experience, of course, they said that it's something positive. We didn't have somebody mentioning that it was negative experience, but it's important to state that 27% of them found it neutral. And here it's the why some of them find it positive and why some of them find it neutral. And the reason of that is because it comes from their decision of using the flip method. Most of the participants use the flip methods because they found their way of teaching boring prior to that. So they wanted to shift away from lecture, and they wanted to find ways to improve the learning environment. And because they felt that through e-learning, the students were not so much engaged to the courses that they were running. However, many of them indicated that there were some difficulties as well. Even though there were a re-energized environment in the class, there were still some students that they didn't come prepared to the class, so they couldn't be so engaged. And we had this resistance from some of them. And this is the reason that many of the participants who reported the experience as neutral were based on that. When the participants were asked to examine their students' experience, based on their evaluations and based on the grades, they found students to be more well prepared. There were some improvement in their grades, and generally they felt more connected to their students. So they felt that all this flip design brought them together. Here is more in detail. Of course, I'm not going through all of them. We have no time, but in more in detail, how they rate their experience through their students' eyes. So if you see their report, you have very high agreements that the grades are being improved, but at the same time, we have a high agreement on the resistance. So we have these 50-50 pros and cons based on the outcomes. At the same time, we have very high rates of agreement on that the student tried to adapt to these flip designs, and that they were more collaborative. Here are the challenges. We can see from here that the main challenges that have been reported was the time consuming. All of the participants reported that they need a lot, like you have to put a lot of effort and you have to find time to prepare all this material. And that is something that lacks for us and academics, because we all know that we are engaged in other stuff of the university, in paperworks, in markings, in teaching. So it's not only about delivering a lecture, it's about the time that you need to prepare the lecture. So it was a very high challenge. It was one of the biggest challenges that was mentioned. And another challenge that was mentioned, it was lack of support, because there were colleagues that they don't feel confident with technology. They don't feel confident with applications that can be used, incorporated in classes, or panels and systems, and they feel that there is no support sources funding, support from their universities to do that.
Thank you very much, Constantina. Before I move on to the qualitative data, I just want to remind those who are not so familiar with this teaching method that this method includes a reverse way of teaching. That means instead of presenting the new material and then working on it, and then the students having to do a homework, the students start with the homework, let's say, they prepare they learn the activity, they learn the material, they work on it, and then they go to class and do interactive activities and more in-depth analysis, okay? So the teacher has to prepare some material beforehand, upload it on the platform, some videos, or even herself lecturing. The students attend that, work on that, and then at the classroom, the teacher elaborates further their understanding and does the more student-centered activities. So from the case studies we have, we just want to present two of them. And briefly, I mainly used flipped classroom in conventional courses, not so much in distant courses. I decided to use it when I realized that it was really, I missed the word, I think it was boring for everybody, for the students and for me to teach 3 hours continuously. I did not know what I was doing is called flipped method, what Constantina said. Some teachers do it without realizing it. I always try to have interactive and interesting classes, not just question and answer classes. It was something that I was familiar with from my own studies, and I remember it. So I thought it is something that my students will appreciate and remember. Then I tried and I saw that my students enjoyed more these classes compared to the ones that I was just lecturing. In general, the exercises helped them remember better what we discussed. Additionally, in the exams, it seems that these methods facilitate and help them getting greater marks. So their performance was also enhanced. I believe that they learn it in more depth and thus they better remember knowledge. More importantly, students develop several skills, especially academic skills, such as critical thinking. The biggest challenge, though, is to develop and design all these things. It is time-consuming. However, nowadays, we have many sources and technology that helps us. This is case study 1. Case study 2. I started using a flipped classroom from my own initiative, plus the feedback I received from my students' evaluations and due to faculty evaluations. A challenge I meet is teaching in large audiences. This one is one of the difficulties they face of 60 or 70 students, because it's difficult to follow you. And they usually do not cooperate because it needs preparation at home. Generally, students were happy. In general, we had a positive, so we plan to repeat this method. It's a challenging, new, and interesting teaching method. It also trains students in skills that are not part of the traditional teaching methods. This method includes a variety of teaching techniques, which students enjoy, and this very fact facilitates learning. The biggest problem for me is implementing this method in large audiences. In smaller groups, these methods would work more successfully. Another difficulty is that this method seems to require more time for preparation from both faculty and students, but it deserves it, I think. So to conclude, we have the main pros and cons. Modern way of teaching, these are the benefits of the method. More interesting and more interactive method, students enjoyed it more compared to lecturing classes. If it is used correctly, students improve their understanding, get greater marks, learn in more depth, and thus they better remember knowledge. More importantly, students develop several skills, especially academic skills such as critical thinking. The cons now. Some of the biggest challenges seem to be to develop and design all these things. It is time consuming, as we said before. To implement this method in large audience is again difficult because not all students prepare themselves before the class. This method seems to require more time for preparation, as we said, from both faculty and students. And some suggestions. Universities should appreciate the effort needed to implement this method. More time is needed to accomplish such activities. Heavy working load that does not leaving free time to develop ideas, especially for people who have positions as chairs or deans. Of course, they don't have enough time. Technical support is needed, especially for those who are not very familiar with technology and they don't know how to apply flipped methods, and a need of training, because the resistance that Constantina taught us before, to some extent, is due to lack of enough knowledge about this method. Because we are not so familiar, we don't risk it to try it. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Constantina.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Papaleontiou-Louca and Dr. Deemetriou for the presentation. I